You think you know your family? You think blood means safety? But what if the people who raised you tried to erase you? What if home wasn't home, but the first battlefield? I came back after 12 years of silence. I thought I was ready to face them. I wasn't. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about survival, secrets, and what happens when the ghost they buried comes back alive. If you're still here, you're already part of this. So hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe. You're going to want to know how this ends. My name is Evelyn Moore. I'm 29 years old, born and raised in Oak Ridge, Virginia, the kind of town that only looks beautiful from far away. If you ask anyone around here about the Moore family, they'll probably give you the same answer. Well-respected, wealthy, patriotic, untouchable. They wouldn't mention me. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they were told to forget. I left Oak Ridge when I was 17. Not for college, not for love, not for anything anyone would consider normal. I left because I had to. I won't say I ran away. That sounds like fear. What I did was walk away, deliberately, without looking back. You can't run when your legs are broken from years of being kicked down, but I learned to walk anyway. It had been 12 years since I saw the inside of my childhood home. 12 years since I heard my mother's voice up close. Not over the phone, not through some message, just the sound of her words bouncing off the same wallpaper that hadn't changed since 1995. And yet, there I was, standing outside their house on a warm, golden evening in May, holding a bottle of wine I didn't plan to drink and a stomach full of acid. The invitation had come as a letter, handwritten. Strange in itself. My mother was never the sentimental type. It was short. Evelyn, we're having a family dinner, Friday, 7 p.m. Come if you want. Mom. Not a single word of warmth, no apology, no, we miss you. Just, come if you want. As if this were some polite social obligation, not the first contact in over a decade. I shouldn't have gone. I know that now. But back then, I thought I could handle it. I thought I was stronger than my past. I had seen war zones. I had been dropped in foreign cities with nothing but a knife and a name. I'd taken lives and saved others. I could speak 6 languages, crack locks in under a minute, and I knew how to kill a man with the heel of my boot. But nothing prepared me for the silence of that house when the door opened. My mother stood there, her perfume unchanged. Too sweet, too strong, like she was trying to hide something rotten. Her eyes scanned me like she was searching for weakness. She didn't smile. You look older, she said. Not nice, not beautiful, just older. Time does that, I replied. She turned without a word and walked inside. I followed. The house looked almost exactly the same. Same cold marble floors, same sterile family portraits on the walls, though none of me. The dining room was already set. White linen, polished silver, candles, like a movie scene, except it didn't smell like food. It smelled like bleach. My father was already seated. He glanced up from his glass of scotch, gave me a tight nod, and went back to sipping. No hug, no questions. Just that same stone-faced authority he always wore like a badge. Then came the sound of footsteps from the stairs. Wow, said a familiar voice. The ghost returns. My brother, Trevor. Slick hair, tailored shirt, arrogance radiating off him like heat from a car hood in July. He looked me over like I was something he might bid on and quickly regret. Don't start, I said quietly. I haven't even said anything yet. The meal began in silence. Dishes were passed, glasses filled. I noticed the wine they poured me was different from theirs, a darker red, from a different bottle. I almost said something, but bit my tongue. Paranoia wasn't new to me. But here, it wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. I took one sip. Bitter. Sharp. Wrong. My mother asked about work, vaguely as if she didn't know what I did or pretended not to. I gave her vague answers in return. Some security contract work. Overseas. Government adjacent. She smiled at that, though it didn't reach her eyes. Still playing soldier? She said. I was never playing. There was a pause. Forks scraped plates. Trevor rolled his eyes. My father watched me like I was a malfunctioning device he didn't know how to fix. Halfway through the meal, I felt the first pulse in my head. A slow, spreading warmth in my throat. My stomach turned. Vision blurred slightly. I steadied my hand on the table. I looked down at my glass again. Not paranoia. Not instinct. Fact. The nausea came fast. Expertly delayed. Just enough to make it seem natural. They'd used something slow-acting. Something expensive. Something hard to trace. I stood up abruptly. Bathroom? I asked. No one moved. No one looked surprised. No one even asked if I was okay. I found it myself. Same place as always, down the hall past the study. I locked the door behind me, turned on the faucet, and forced myself to vomit. Over and over, until there was nothing left. My fingers trembled. My vision was spotted. I'd survived worse. I'd swallowed poison before. I knew how to breathe through it, knew how to sweat it out, knew how to look in the mirror, pale and broken, and say, "You are not done yet." It took 20 minutes for the worst of it to pass. 20 minutes alone in that pristine bathroom, while my family waited at the table like nothing was happening, like I wasn't being erased. When I returned, no one said a word. Trevor was on his phone. My father was halfway through another drink. My mother glanced up, expression unreadable. I smiled faintly. "You'll have to try harder," I said, and sat back down. No one laughed, not even a twitch. But I saw it then. In the way my mother's mouth stiffened, the way my father's hand tensed around the glass, the way Trevor suddenly had trouble making eye contact. They'd expected me to die quietly, to go away, like before, like always. But I had come home a different kind of ghost, and ghosts don't forget. I didn't sleep that night. The guest room they gave me was the same one I had as a teenager, or at least it pretended to be. The posters were gone. So were the books. What used to be mine had been stripped clean and replaced with sterile hotel decor. Taupe walls, white sheets, a clock that ticked a little too loudly, like it was counting something down. But some things couldn't be erased. There were still faint dents on the door where I had kicked it shut during arguments. The floorboards still creaked in the same pattern when I stepped near the closet, the one where I used to hide the things I cared about. A shoebox filled with sketches. Letters I never sent. A pocket knife I bought at a gas station with crumpled singles. I wondered if they'd found it, burned it, laughed. I stared at the ceiling for hours, going over every detail of that dinner, my mother's expression when I returned to the table, my father's stillness, Trevor's silence. Something had changed in the air after I sat back down. They hadn't tried to pretend anymore. They knew I knew. And they didn't care. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to pretend this was over. They had declared war, not just on me, but on the version of myself I had built from ash and blood and discipline. I had spent over a decade learning how to survive people like them. I had killed for less, but I wasn't here for blood. Not yet. I was here for answers. At 6 a.m., I packed my bag, walked out of the house, and drove east. No one tried to stop me. The house stayed quiet behind me, not mourning, not angry, just silent. Like a crime scene after the tape is gone. I didn't go far. Oak Ridge hadn't changed much. A new strip mall here, a vape shop where the diner used to be. But the bones of the town were still the same. tight-lipped and sun-bleached. A place where secrets stuck to the sidewalk like old chewing gum. I found the man I was looking for in a tiny coffee shop that still smelled like burnt beans and old paper. He was sitting in the corner booth, a newspaper in front of him, even though I knew he didn't read it. He just liked the image. Edward Lowell hadn't aged the way most people do. His hair had turned a distinguished steel gray, but his eyes, sharp, narrowed, blue like cracked ice, were the same as when I first met him at 19. Back then, I was barely holding myself together. He taught me how to stop bleeding, how to disappear, how to stay dangerous. He didn't look surprised to see me. "Didn't think you'd ever come back," he said, sipping from a chipped mug. "I didn't think you'd still be here." He grinned. "I got tired of running." "Or you realized you'd run far enough?" He nodded slowly, then gestured for me to sit. "So, you gonna tell me what happened, or should I start guessing?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the half-full bottle of wine from the dinner. He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't take you for the sentimental type." "They tried to poison me." He didn't laugh, didn't scoff. Just stared at the bottle like it was a piece of evidence in a case he already suspected. "Your family?" he asked. I nodded. He leaned back, lips pressed in a line. "You sure it wasn't a warning?" "I know a kill attempt when I taste one." He tapped a finger on the table. "And now you want what exactly? Revenge? Justice?" "I want the truth. I want to know why now, after all these years." He exhaled through his nose. "Maybe they think you're a threat." "To what?" "To whatever they've built while you were gone." The word built hung there like a loaded weapon. He reached into his coat pocket and slid a folder across the table. I didn't ask how he knew I'd show up. He always knew more than he said. Inside the folder were names, numbers, contracts, a network diagram of companies, subsidiaries, offshore accounts. The Moore family name sat at the top of every page like a brand. "What is this?" I asked, already knowing. "Your father's empire," Edward said, "built on government contracts, shell companies, and at least 3 dead engineers whose families were paid to shut up." The name Baker stood out in the corner of one report. "Marion," Edward said before I could ask. "Daughter of one of the engineers. She's been digging for years, quietly, but she doesn't have access. You do." "Why me?" He gave me a look. "Because you're the ghost," he said. "No one sees you coming." I closed the folder. "What about Trevor?" Edward's expression darkened. "Your brother's dirtier than your father. Laundering funds through fake charities, coordinating intimidation jobs. I've seen worse, but not by much." "And my mother?" "She's the cleaner, the one who makes problems disappear, including daughters apparently." Something shifted in my chest. Not pain, not anger. Something colder, like an old scar flexing in new ways. Edward leaned forward, voice low. "You can walk away, Evelyn. Right now. Disappear again. They'll assume you're dead. But if you stay, this gets ugly. Fast." "I'm not walking away," I said. "Then you'll need allies." That's when he handed me another card. A name. A contact. Thomas Blair. Ethics lawyer. Ex-military. Specialized in corporate whistleblowing. I'd heard of him. Even seen him once, testifying before Congress on some industrial disaster buried by contracts and red tape. Edward stood to leave. He looked at me one more time. "Whatever you're planning," he said, "make sure it's worth what it'll cost." I stayed in the booth long after he left, staring at the folder, the names, the connections, until the waitress came by and asked if I needed anything else. I said no. Because what I needed, no one could serve me on a plate. This wasn't just revenge. This wasn't about the wine, or the dinner, or the poison. It was about everything that had led to that moment. The lies, the silence, the erasure. They'd built a kingdom on my absence. Now I was back, and I knew exactly where to start digging. The building didn't look like much. Tucked between a pawn shop and a Vietnamese bakery, the law office of Thomas Blair had no nameplate, no shining brass letters. Just a small white door and a buzzer that didn't work on the first press. I knocked. The man who opened the door didn't fit the image I'd formed in my mind. No tailored suit, no courtroom polish. Just jeans, a threadbare t-shirt, and the face of someone who hadn't slept in a day or two, not because he couldn't, but because he chose not to. "You must be Evelyn," he said, as if we'd already met in another life. "Edward sent me." He stepped aside. "Then come in. You've already been watched long enough." The office was dim. Not in a gloomy way, but deliberate. Blinds half drawn. Desk cluttered but controlled. A whiteboard on one wall was covered in overlapping arrows and names that made my skin tighten. "I assume you've been briefed," he said, motioning for me to sit. "I've been poisoned." He glanced at me for a long second. "So, yes." He walked to a drawer, pulled out a thick stack of files and a flash drive, then dropped them onto the desk like they were the real weight in the room. "Your family didn't just build a company, they built a system. And it's fragile in all the places they thought it wasn't." I opened the file. Bank transactions, email printouts, internal memos from More Dynamics, contracts awarded to shell companies that circled back to subsidiaries run by people who didn't exist on paper. Except they did exist. In cemeteries, obituaries, military death records. One name was circled in red: D. Baker. "David Baker," Thomas said quietly. "Lead engineer on Project Helix. Died in a car fire on the 405. Everyone said it was an accident, except his daughter." I turned the page. A photograph was paper-clipped to the corner. A young woman. Sharp chin, wild curly hair, brown eyes that looked half-haunted, half-furious. Her name was handwritten beneath it: Marion Baker. She has documents, hard drives, footage, things she salvaged from her father's home after he died. She's been keeping it buried for years. "Why?" I asked. "Because she's smart, and she knows what happens to people who shout too early." "Where is she?" "Chicago." I exhaled, slow and steady. "I'll go." He narrowed his eyes. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because 2 days ago, she was attacked." I went still. "She's alive," he added quickly. "Barely. Broke into her own apartment before they could finish the job. She's in hiding now. Doesn't trust anyone." "I don't blame her." "I thought you might be the only one she would." Something in the way he said that made my hands still on the desk. "Why me?" He tapped the photo. "Because you're not just someone her father trusted. You're the proof that surviving isn't a weakness." I didn't respond. I couldn't. That night, I booked a red-eye flight to Chicago using a name that didn't belong to me. I kept my phone off. Paid in cash. I didn't sleep on the plane. I studied the documents Edward gave me again, tracing patterns, memorizing numbers, faces. I built a map inside my head, a fortress of connections. When I landed, it was raining. Thick, hot drops that steamed off the asphalt and made the city smell like metal and dirt. A woman in a blue raincoat met me at the edge of a parking garage and handed me a burner phone. She didn't give a name, just a code: Blue 17. That was all I needed. An hour later, I was in a basement apartment on the edge of Logan Square. The blinds were drawn, and Marion Baker was pointing a pistol at me from behind a shelf of books. "I don't trust anyone," she said. "That makes 2 of us." "Say something only Evelyn Moore would say." I paused, thinking back. Then, "Your father used to say engineers were surgeons with dirtier hands." Her arm lowered a fraction of an inch. I haven't heard that since I was 12, she whispered. I was there when he said it. She stared at me, her breath uneven. You were just a kid. I still am. Somewhere under the ash. She finally lowered the weapon and gestured for me to sit. The apartment was cramped but clean, books stacked on every surface, old computer parts in neatly labeled bins, a kettle whistling faintly on the stove. It was a bunker with warmth, built to hide but not to disappear. He told me once, she said, pouring tea without asking, that if anything ever happened to him, you were the one person I could trust. I accepted the cup. He was smarter than either of us. She sat across from me, crossed her legs, and leaned forward. They're planning something, she said. Project Helix didn't die with my father. It just changed shape. New name. New funders. But the core's the same. Predictive warfare systems. Automated threat suppression. AI-based battlefield command. I'd heard of this. Rumors. Whispers. Classified chatter buried under layers of protocol. Helix was shelved because it made the wrong decision in the Bahrain simulation, I said. It labeled a hospital as a valid strike target. She nodded. And they covered it up. I rubbed my jaw. How much do you have? Enough to bury them. The room fell quiet again, the kind of quiet that presses against the ribs. We go public, she said. Not yet. She blinked. Why not? Because we're not ready. We don't have the right support. We don't have safe passage. And the second we make noise, they'll burn every file, every server, and come after us with cleaner teams. Her voice hardened. Then what the hell are we waiting for? We make a copy. We set traps. We leak pieces. Not all at once, just enough to make them nervous. Make them overreact. And while they're chasing shadows, we go after the source. Your family. My family, I echoed. Starting with Trevor. Because I'd seen something in those files, a name I hadn't expected. Mine. Not Evelyn Moore, not the girl they tried to erase, but the ghost they thought was theirs to control. They'd used me, my missions, my location history, pieces of who I was, all fed into Helix to teach it how to adapt, how to think like a survivor. They hadn't just tried to kill me, they'd turn me into a blueprint. The first domino fell in Atlanta. An anonymous leak hit the inboxes of 6 investigative reporters at precisely 3 a.m. 3 documents, a voice memo, and a redacted security tape. The voice memo featured a conversation between 2 executives at More Dynamics discussing data acquisition via indirect civilian modeling. One of them mentioned my name, not Evelyn Moore, not as a person, as a test subject. The security footage showed a black site in Ukraine, a training operation I'd been told was simulation only. On the screen, I watched myself, a younger version, leading a strike team through a collapsed building. What I hadn't known then, what the video made clear now, was that every move I made, every breath, every eye twitch, was being recorded not for debrief, but for data feeding into Project Helix's neural systems. I was the prototype, the mold. The story spread fast, faster than any of us expected. The Pentagon denied everything. More Dynamics issued statements through tightly gritted teeth. Lawyers flooded inboxes, but the internet didn't care. The fuse was lit. Within days, protesters gathered outside the Moore estate. Online forums called it the Ghost Code. Some people thought I was dead. Others thought I was some rogue AI myself. The truth was stranger than both. Trevor tried to control the damage. I watched him from a rooftop 2 buildings over. He looked smaller in person than he had in memory. His confident posture faltered as he slipped out of his building, surrounded by men in earpieces, eyes twitching toward every shadow. He'd always been the prince of the family, the future CEO, the golden one. Now he looked like someone afraid of his own reflection. I didn't pull the trigger. I wasn't here for that. I let the IRS do their job, let the DOJ knock on his door, let the headlines tear at his perfect shell. By the end of the week, Trevor Moore was indicted on 12 counts of fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to endanger national security. He was led from his apartment in cuffs. Not a single family member stood by him. My father fell next. I wasn't there when it happened, just heard the news over a static phone line. A massive breach at Moore Dynamics. Shareholders panicked. Investors withdrew. The company's stock plummeted. He was removed from his position by the board. An investigation into falsified patents and bribes opened within 24 hours. I got a message that night. One sentence, typed in all caps. You think you've won, but you've killed your own blood. There was no name, but I knew it was him. He still didn't understand. I hadn't done this for revenge. I'd done it because the truth deserved air. Because people like him rot things from the inside out. Because silence had never saved me. The last one left was my mother. She didn't fight. When I walked into that house again, the same white house with the same silent walls, I found her sitting alone in the dining room. The same table, same cold porcelain plates, a meal untouched. She didn't look at me. It was always you, she said quietly. Even when you were small, you were dangerous. You didn't cry like other children. You watched. I had to, I replied. You never gave me permission to speak. She looked old. Not in the way people age. In the way things dry out and break. I tried to erase you because you saw through all of it. I said nothing. Are you here to kill me? No, I said. You already did that a long time ago. She didn't ask what I meant. I walked out without looking back. No gun. No words of forgiveness. Just quiet. The house behind me had never been a home. Now it was just walls and ghosts. I disappeared again after that. Cut ties with everyone but Marion and Edward. I sent Thomas a thank you gift. An old book on espionage history with a note inside. Some ghosts don't haunt. They testify. I turned in my ID to the agency. Left the burner phones in a shoebox with no return address. Vanished like smoke into a different kind of life. A month later, I bought a cabin off a dirt road in Oregon. Near a lake. No neighbors. Just trees and the sound of water hitting shore. I adopted a dog. A mutt with one ear and a crooked tail. I named him Bones. He followed me everywhere, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he blinked. Some days, I wake up before dawn and sit on the porch with a blanket and coffee, watching the world fill in around me. I read books I'd never had time for. I plant things. Tomatoes mostly. They haven't bloomed yet, but they will. I'm still learning how to rest without looking over my shoulder. Still teaching my body that it doesn't have to flinch when the wind moves the branches. I don't forgive them. Not because I can't. Because it's no longer my job. But I'm learning to forgive myself. For the girl I left behind. For the years I spent as a weapon instead of a woman. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the window and almost don't recognize her. She looks peaceful. Not soft, not weak. Just free. And that, more than anything, is the revenge they never saw coming.